hear the most annoying sound in the world?
Hey, this is Mike Starr, and you're listening to Monday Morning Critic Podcast.
Mike Starr is a marvelous actor known for iconic Goodfellas, one of the best comedies in cinematic history, and Dumb and Dumber. Uncle Buck, Ed Wood, the best baseball movie ever made in The Natural, which he does not get enough credit for, and one of the most underrated movies ever made, I will go on record, and Kill the Irishman, one of the most underrated classics.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Please welcome Mike Starr. Mike, Kill the Irishman is so good, and I'm stunned more people don't talk about that movie. It is so good.
By the way, don't forget Miller's Crossing, where I
Miller's
sang it,
you have so much.
The Bodyguard.
I'm not done yet going over your credits, but I feel like if I did them all in the introduction, we would be here for like 4 hours because there's so many.
It's nice of you to say.
Yeah, so I have to say, you're very close to me in heritage, right? Half Polish, half Irish. I'm half Polish, quarter Irish. So we're close. My dad used to joke that we want to beat somebody up, but we forget who. So I miss my dad's sense of humor, but that's what he would have said.
My dad was grew up. He was from Massachusetts, a small.
That's where I'm out of.
Oh, fantastic! And his parents, my grandparents, were Polish immigrants, and got out of I think it was the Tsar's army. My grandfather was a blacksmith, and I don't know how he got out, this and that, and he went to an all-Irish town, but he had such skills with, for instance, the optical factories and this and that he was able to get a job. He was the only Polish guy, and I wanted to learn Polish growing up, but my mother, from Queens, we never really, Irish, Catholic, from just a generation or two back from Ireland. But I only heard it when I went up to Massachusetts, and I regret it. Even in college, I didn't study. I studied Italian, but I had, I like to say, my friend's dad was I like to say he was Sicilian American. He was my godfather. I remember I called it Godfather. My cousin Joey was my godfather, when they do it. But Joey Britton was his nickname, right? He was a character. But I got very influenced. I learned all these things, and I grew up in one of the most idyllic neighborhoods ever. It was a housing project and so many different types of people. But I was interested in culture. I'm not talking about, talking like that. I don't mean that. People say, what was it like to grow up with the Goodfellas? I said, I didn't, the people you meet, this and that. But it was really a blue collar background. And I also had my Uncle Ray Panatti from Chelsea, moved out to Peabody, Peabody. And he's always saying, Johnny, you got to move up here. And that was a big thrill to go see my Uncle Ray. Yeah, I got some tonic for you, Mike.
That's a good Boston accent.
They tell me, I'll tell you a funny story where it bled into a New York accent. I'll tell you later whenever you want on the film Billy Bathgate. And I needed help with my New York accent from the great dialect coach, Tim Monick. But it's funny, I would be influenced if I'm speaking to friends, and I've had to use it in some films. And a couple of one I had to really do a serious Southie one. Actually, Charlestown, friends there.
Yeah.
And anyway, I always wanted to. I was fascinated with various cultures in the East and in Asia, and experiences there and in Asia. So I always had. I don't know. I hung around all different types of people. I've been allowed into various things, and a lot of times people thought I'd go in and audition. And they'd say, no, you can't play. You're not Irish, And then someone would say, oh, you got the map of Ireland on your face. And then someone would say, I would have Israelis speak Hebrew to me in an airport, And I said, what the? I still don't know what I said. I'm sorry, I don't understand. Oh, I thought you were from Israel, And we'd speak in English. And then I've had people in Italy say, what's an Italian guy like you? And then Italian people say, oh, aren't you Russian or something like that? And then I've had... it's crazy. So I'd go and audition. They go, what's your name? Starino. And actually the name is Gwiazda, Gwyazd. I think the Ukrainians and Russians might say Zvezda.
Yeah.
But it means star in the sky. And I guess my dad added an R. and made it star. So you would get these things the last 20, 25 years. Meet your star relatives, and those are people from probably England and Northern Ireland, this and that. So I wasn't related. I did one of those ancestries, and it's interesting what pops up, you know.
Right,
And I
right.
wasn't quite as Irish as I thought, I think. And then, geez, there was one Northern Russian, Scandinavia, you know, small amounts,
Yeah.
even a little by France and Germany. But my grandfather was from Krakow. My grandmother was from Bialystok, which people would know Max Bialystok.
Yeah.
She was from Bialystok, with the you know the Bialys came from and was used in the producers, you know. So enough of that. It's funny because I would go. I remember starting out. I wanted in the public theater doing a thing on Poland, and I'd have a friend from Indiana who was Irish background, Irish name, and he's doing it. He says, "You should get in." They said, "Oh no, you're not Polish." I said, "Okay." And I've had to speak it sometimes. And during this whole COVID thing, I started relearning. I've been taking Polish, a few languages, Mandarin, and I have different people I try to learn from and speak to. And I started up the Italian and the Spanish again, and this and that. So I don't know. I'm probably steering you way off course. I'm sorry.
No,
I'm like a float at the Macy's Day Parade. You got to reel me in, you know?
yeah, I can speak Polish fluently, so I like hearing this
Oh, you
stuff.
do?
I do.
Fantastic.
I do. Yeah.
So as soon as I said Gwiazda, I was right?
Yes. Bardzo dobrze. Bardzo dobrze. I have to say this. Before we get it, because I want to lead off with a question about your wife and your brother, which I think you'll appreciate because I'm curious. But I know
three older brothers.
Yep, you're currently on the West Coast, but you have solid roots in Chicago, New York, and we're going to get into. Okay, so very kind of basic question, but I've been thinking about it. Another interview.
You didn't say Hollywood.
No.
We live here now. The latest inclination is because my wife works at the Children's Hospital of Orange County. She was brought out to help out with the program. Yeah. Okay.
So I mean, I'm a pizza guy, like, and I hope this answer is what I think it's going to be. Can you compare deep dish to New York pizza? I don't think it's close. I think New York pizza beats Chicago every day of the week and twice on Sunday.
People. You know, Chicago has also a lot of places that make the thin crust too. Right. So when I did Mad Dog, it was my second time in Chicago. Uncle Buck was my first.
Yeah.
But it was interesting. Pizzeria Uno wasn't a big chain yet, whatever. And I loved the deep dish, and I would send some to Robert De Niro, but I couldn't do too much, and we would talk food a lot of times. You know, I don't want that sounding terrible, but it was interesting because he's so astute with food and restaurants, and he said, I think they use butter in the crust. I like that very much. It's interesting. I watched on the History Channel where that comes from, the Chicago deep dish. In the long run, I prefer the New York, of course, street. Also,
thank God. Whew.
Yeah.
I thought you were going the Chicago route.
Oh, no. I mean, New Yorkers were teasing me. One of my friends would call me the Chicago Chamber of Commerce. I absolutely adored my time in Chicago, had worked there. And then my wife, when she finally, after almost 10, 12 years of training, first, she knew two of my favorite places at the time. We're talking 98. Two of my favorite places at the time was San Francisco and Chicago.
Yeah.
So people would think, you could write your own ticket wherever you are. Now it's in a very narrow, and very few women were in it at the time, especially pediatric cardiothoracic surgery. It's a narrow specialty, and got a job in Chicago, and eventually University of Chicago, and then Jersey, and then out here, you know. So as far as pizza, there's actually a couple of places. I have a friend who makes the thin crust, but there's a few places they make it like that. But in New York, I like actually when they make the not the Sicilian square, but the margarita. I like that.
Margarita pizza is great. Yeah.
I grew up in a place. I grew up in a place that was so United Nations, literally. The one area was for the United Nations workers. But there used to be a place in downtown Flushing. People have their favorite places, right? And I still haven't had anything like this. you know, we have the places people mention, John's in Brooklyn and Lombardi's, different places in New York.
Sure.
But there was a place in downtown Flushing. I still haven't been. I don't know if they use sugar in it or extra cheese, but it was the tomato sauce. It was right at my bus stop for high school, and or if we were going to see the Mets for the 7 train, which people know about now, I think. But it was one stop, you know, the 7 train. But it was Gloria Pizza, and I couldn't find people because everyone has their favorite. But there was something about they would come out bubbling cheese. I haven't had anything like that. If there was a sweet thing, because you know, you have Patsy's. I don't know if you know about I wound up running into a friend, I think, that bought the place, a guy who played football in college. But Patsy's was a restaurant. They have one in the 50s, but it was a restaurant on 2nd Avenue, I think 113th Street. And Sinatra just loved it. But next to it, it was part of it was, there was a classic guy. It had like 100-year-old, I don't think it was wood burning. I think it was a charcoal oven.
Right.
And that was the close thing. And that was awesome. And sometimes Frankie Beard, when my wife went to med school, we moved up to the Bronx. Friend Jack McGee pointed us out to a place. You know, Jack McGee, the actor, said, "Hey, Pelham Bay is perfect." I said, in those days, when you went to different boroughs, it was like going to a different state almost, except as kids, we went into Manhattan. But we wound up there, and there were some great places there, Crosby's and my friend Lucas. But when we were living there, our friend Frankie Beard would drive. When I take my youngest daughter into, we're going to take Crosby Taxi or whatever, you know, and our friend Frankie Beard, who looked like Joe Pesci, was a great guy. He'd say, "Mike, I'm going to take you to Patsy's on 13th Street." That became such a favorite, and it was such an event, and it was so thin, and the cheese was bubbly. The reason I mentioned Gloria, so I'm doing a film with Ileana Douglas. And she was Melvin Douglas's daughter, thing, you know, famous actor, this and that, great character actor. And we were talking one day, and she grew up in Connecticut, and she said, "But I used to spend summers in Flushing, Mike. And my grandmother insisted I was going to marry the guy. I don't know if he owned it or he worked in this pizza place. I don't know if you know in Flushing, but it was the best pizza I've had in my life." I think she goes, I said, "What is it?" She goes, "Gloria." I said, "Right on the corner of the 2534 bus stop."
That's great.
So,
That's awesome.
So if that answers your question.
It does. It does.
And the paisanos here in my friend Bernie Friedman from Brooklyn used to have this great cancer walk benefit, and he would cater, you know, the paisanos would contribute. It was one of these 24-hour things, and I did a few times. I didn't do the 24 hours and, you know, camp out, but paisanos, and it was in Redondo Beach, I think. And he said it's still there, and I was amazed. And the guy was from Italy. I think, you know, people have all these theories about water. I've had Boston pizza, you know, and Mike Ruzioni.
Of course,
right? So
Team USA.
So I said to him, one of my best friends, Frank Renzulli, who some people said wrote some of the best Sopranos episodes, wrote some classic ones. Frankie was from East Boston, Maverick Square Projects, and Joe Montagna had at his place. He had a place. Him and his wife had a place for their Taste of Chicago, and when they were out promoting the film, and I knew a couple of guys, but Michael Ruzioni was in. I said, "Your father worked at Santapio's Pizza, East Boston," and he cracked up. I mean, he has I think a building named after him in East Boston for hockey. You know, what a great guy. So Santapio's, I love that place. That was Boston style. What part of Massachusetts?
I'm on. So I went to school in Boston, but I'm on the other side. I'm closer to the Berkshires, west. But
my dad was from Southbridge.
Okay, yeah, that's right around where we are.
Dudley. That was my big thrill in childhood. You know, we had buses go by in Flushing. We were a few miles from Shea Stadium, not far from LaGuardia, but we would have buses, and so many relatives my father would put up and friends. We had all sorts of characters come through our way. And I, a lot of times, would sleep on the couch and I'd hear sounds and the lights would be on. I'll never forget one of the first times I had to be in, I don't know if it was Webster or Dudley, maybe it was Southbridge. And they had this, it wasn't a farm, son. You know, they had some chickens, they had this and that. They had a wood burning oven. My grandmother would make would make apple pies, and I'll never forget. I slept alone in a room. It was so quiet and so dark.
That's accurate. That's accurate. That's accurate. You know, and I told you I was going to ask you about your brother Beau.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how many good movies he was in. He was in
Oh, he's amazing.
Cinderella Man, which is one of my all-time favorites. The Corruptor.
He had a great scene. He got cut out of that, and Ron Howard apologized to him. I think he's quickly in it, but he had a scene where he played the butcher who gave the fighter he would give him like free meat and this and that, because he knew they were struggling. He had some beautiful scenes, and Ron Howard apologized to him, but they really cut out. But yeah, I love that movie.
And he's in Speed, and then the big one that I love that I adore as a movie, underrated again, The Corruptor with Mark Wahlberg. Speaking of Boston, The Corruptor's a great movie.
Wow,
I believe
interesting.
Jet Li, great movie.
He was also, we were in 6 films together, I think.
Wow.
He was the dad in Goodfellas. Months, and they freeze on him.
Wow, I should have looked into. I did not. I missed that.
On the 4th of July, who I actually knew, the guy was based on Ron Kovic. We had been friends in college and this and at Hofstra, and my brother had this great scene where Tom Cruise comes in with his friend, comes in the wheelchair. It's the first time he's talking about, and he's drinking, and he's talking about, they told me they can shove it up your ass, Vietnam, this and that. And my brother plays an Iwo Jima veteran who says, hey, you chose them. They didn't choose you. In other words, you weren't drafted, this and that.
Right.
And you can shove it up your ass. I was in Iwo Jima. It has this great speech. If you get to see it, he's brilliant.
Oh, Born on the 4th of July is fantastic. Absolutely.
Yeah, and my brother does a great thing. But to make you laugh, I had some things, and I'm very careful about ad-libbing. So one take, I had to say a few things, shoot the pool. I'm playing his brother. Finally, one take, I decide I'm going to ad-lib. Yeah, well, I was in Korea, right? I start this speech, and they go, great, and cut. And my brother goes, what the fuck are you doing? He goes, what are you doing, a Gettysburg Address? Shut up. This is my scene, schmuck. And I was he was my stage mother when he was with the Jets. He ambushed me. I was going to be a poli-sci major, and he ambushed me with drama. I wound up getting a scholarship. And then when he was divorced, best friends with his wife, he came down I said, come down from Toronto, I'll get you in New York. I put an acting class, and he had done work up in Toronto, and said, oh, come on down to New York, stay with, do this and that. And he started doing things, and I said, you really belong in LA. And so in the 80s, he did all those A-teams and all those guys.
Yeah. Really accomplished actor.
Very sharp. He introduced me to a lot of French and Italian films. I was so influenced, like Cinema Paradiso, and he really got me into a lot of interesting stuff. Or he'd go, come on, like if I'm visiting him or my kids are visiting, like I'd stay with him out in when he lived in Burbank, and he'd say, come on, there's this great theater in Pasadena. There was about 8 people in this great Brazilian movie about a woman who reads letters for everyone who can't read this and that, and he'd find these great things for me. And I was a lot into, at one period, Japanese films and certain other films styles, but he had a great influence. Yeah, so he really had a great knowledge of film. He had an awareness, of
accomplished. Accomplished guy for sure. And before I get into your life, your filmography, I did want to bring up your wife, who, and it's just not like a personal thing. You brought it up in other interviews. Sounds like an absolutely remarkable woman.
Yes.
She's a doctor. Let me ask you, so as you guys, acting is almost a career where you have to sacrifice so much, right? A lot of it is, and I can imagine medical school in a different way is obviously the same thing. So how do you guys make it work early on, Mike? Because she's and I know from watching other interviews that you guys really complement each other really well. I mean, I don't want to be cheesy, but made for each other applies here, right? So
she's kept me.
Yeah.
She's kept me, allowed me with all my insanity.
So how does it work? How do you guys keep your journeys, right? And then stay together? How does that unfold for you?
It's interesting because I couldn't say there's a formula except love, and I'm not, I'm a knucklehead, and laugh and I fool around and no crazy people. But what's interesting, we met in the summer theater, and I was I was ready after school. I said, okay, it's time to look for Jesus and the Buddha or whatever I was looking for, whatever. But this friend of mine, Tom Bray, who now wound up in Portland and produce and teach, he does all this volunteer work, but he actually was on the, I'll think of the show in a second, but he had been a freshman at House. Said, Mike, would you do me a favor and play the Scottish Colonel McKean in 1776? I said, I'm taking a break from acting. I want to find meaning in life. But he said, oh, could you just do one show? I wound up doing 2 summers, and my wife was a music major in college and a musician. And there was a small orchestra, and she was playing the flute. She came out of a music family. Evidently, it seems to me, it was always secretly she wanted to be some kind of, healer, doctor, whatever, something in that world, east, west, anything. But this was what the path, and I think the guidance counselor said, oh, I don't know if you could do med school, whatever. And we were friends, and all of a sudden we're married 2 years later by a Zen master, and a few years later, a friend of ours, Joe Janito, Catholic priest, we did that. We covered all bases.
Wow.
But it's funny because you turn around, you go, okay. And I remember, I got a drama scholarship, and what can I do with it? I even tried to go back and try to play ball. That's another funny story. But I said, well, I got a job at a health spa, which was then, I'm trying to write a comedy about was then Jack LaLanne's. It was, it's now, I think, LA Fitness. It became Bally's and everything. But I remember I met interesting people because I was in Queens, but working in Manhattan, and I worked down by the World Trade Center. It was the Woolworth building. The people I met, famous people. It was like 1976, but I remember going, I'm supposed to be pretty good at this. I had a scholarship. And now I have either my wife was pregnant or we had our first child already on the way. And I said, I got to try to get work in this business. So there was so many ways you tried to do it. I did showcases, and my friend Gary Epstein became an agent. And even the ex-Met, Art Shamsky, the jet player Matt Snell introduced me to Art Shamsky, who had an agency with a great woman, Cynthia Ragland, and they had a commercial agency. You're doing whatever you can to get work. And in those days, it was theater and commercials in New York, and they'd throw a bone or something to people. And it seemed like everybody that was playing any character, whether he was a detective or a mobster or a fireman or an ironwork, everybody was 40 years old in those days, 40 or 50. I'm like 26, 27.
Yep.
And, I had to do what I could do, and I did a lot of regional theater. But what's interesting, my wife got into med school in 86, right? So I had done some things, and you ask a great question because she had to go back to Queens College where I was from. We lived near it, and she had to do pre-med. It's really crazy. I don't know how to answer it. She did so many different jobs. It's like people say, oh, you married a hustler. That was really cool. How's it feel to have married someone that makes more, people just say knucklehead things to you.
Knuckleheads, yeah.
Yeah, you just go, uh-huh. And even nice people say things like that,
Ignorant, Mike, ignorant.
Yeah.
People. Yeah.
And even, or some people, how did that happen? So you just go, okay. But it was really and still is a journey that everyone joined in, whether all my brothers, my parents, people, family, you had situations, me being an aspiring actor in New York and holding out, going to the West Coast when all the money was out there. I wound up doing a play out there and started getting all this work, but came back. And it's crazy. You had people coming, and there would be funny times during my wife's residency. My brother Jimmy, God rest his soul, Vietnam veteran, he would come over on a Monday night and watch football and be betting the games. And my son John would get the biggest kick out of just listening to him curse out people. And so many people helped out. And when I first started out struggling, my brother Jim, all of them, my brother John and Beau would be in different places, but they would do things. My brother Jimmy would take us to theater, to Broadway shows, and so many people did things for us and helped out. my oldest brother John and Joanne. I mean, they watched. I remember we were in the Bronx, and we had to go to England for some. Because my wife had to decide what a special it was going to be, and she was born on an American air base in England, and they moved to Brooklyn, where my father-in-law was from, and my mother-in-law was from Cicero, actually, and for a while a farm in Michigan, and we went back there to see her roots and to think and whatever,
Yeah.
But there was, to answer that, I remember when Joanne was thinking what she wanted to do, and she had been working at she grabbed all sorts of jobs, but she was working research in Sloan Kettering. And a couple of older doctors said, you really should do med school. And again, she was thinking of being a nurse midwife at one time. We were influenced by this woman, Barbara Brand, all of which would be great paths to go. I'm trying to think, all different things. And she had studied a lot of different things, but she was especially great with people. Even before, way before, I mean, stories, I have great stories of kindness and fearlessness and things, and friends and strangers, and she's really a special person. I'm saying this not because I'm married to a friend, I remember saying something about, we have a great luxury in America, and even a luxury our parents didn't have of going for it all. She said, you know what I'm going to put you through? I said, wait a second. Now, by then had been married 11 years, 13 years. All the lunatics I brought through these doors, and I could begin to tell you another time of a lot of different worlds and people and the things you did, and you would never let me quit acting. And, I worked different jobs through med school. You'd grab bar work. It'd be funny. My brother Jimmy worked by a place by the Long Island Railroad in Jamaica, South Jamaica. And I'd be working there, and a TV show would come on, like Crime Story or something like that. And someone said, is that you up there? Like, what are you doing here? You'd say, oh, yeah, that's me, whatever. Because you'd grab what you could. But, you had so-called nannies. One of the best stories I like to tell people is that on May 15th, my wife had finals in med school. And we were in the Bronx, where Jack McGee pointed us to, and his wife at the time pointed us to live, and helped us. All these things. So many people. We've moved so many times, but I'll never forget. We lost one of I say alleged nannies. They were parties. They came from Europe, but this and that. We needed someone that if I wasn't there, like I could go out of work 3 months, or be working in New York, grab a commercial here and there, and so I was home with the kids. You know what I mean? I would and then there's sometimes so we needed someone. There's a couple of really good ones, artists and this and that from all over. But I'll never forget we lost this one. I gotta go home, testify against my dad, whatever, 3 weeks, whatever the story was. And it was right at the finals. And Joanne said to me, don't worry about it. I'll cover it. This is too important. I was on Goodfellas.
Yeah.
So I go into, I hope this isn't too boring, but it's kind of a cool story. Victor Borg, people would remember from back in, classic, brilliant performer. But his son, VB Jr., who didn't like the business, but was one of the nicest people, he was the second AD, and Joe Reedy was the first AD, and he became a producer with Scorsese and I think Woody Allen, whatever. If you watch Curb, you see Joe Reedy on it with Martin Scorsese, Marty. You mentioned Marty, Bob, or Gene Wilder, I just go, yes, and John Lithgow, there's so many, Dustin Hoffman, I mean, so many kind people to me, but special people in my life. So anyway, I go up, I say, VB, what are we doing the week of the 15th? He goes, the wedding scene. Why? I said, you need kids? He goes, yeah, you got any? I said, I sure do. I love to tell people that we watched my kids. My oldest one was 16, and she said, no, I'm not taking off from school. She was so serious. She's a teacher now.
Yeah.
I was in Chicago, primary school, this and that, and kindergarten. She's amazing. And that's Cassie. But Nicole was, 8 and 9. She sat on Lorraine Bracco's lap, and Beau was her godfather, so it would be really funny. And my son John, they kept telling him not to look at the camera. He's looking at it. He was such a ball breaker. He brought his friend Anthony, whose mom was from the area where a lot of people they use as extra, one line, so-called real people. Well, they're different characters. And they were characters that Scorsese would bring in, that had such great looks, as you see. And, and got performances out of some people, this and that, anyone. You got, obviously, everyone. But I say that respectfully because there was such a melange of actors and people that was their first or whatever. It was just great. But there we were doing the wedding scene. And at one point, I remember Martin Scorsese asked me to ad-lib something. I don't know if that was the wedding scene or another scene with Maury coming in, but he laughed so hard. I did something. I'm a fanatic about ad-libbing correctly. That's why I said Commandant. It was 1960. I researched the time. I research everything.
Yep.
Because it bothers me. Even shows I love, when I hear something that's very 2000 whatever,
and
it's supposed to be 1960, and they say, I get crazy. I'm a little nuts, and I'm tough on myself as well. But it was such a great thing. And this one time, I had lived something. He said, I want you to insult Maurice Wig, and I should have done a quick one, but he had one, and Beau was behind the camera, and he said Martin Scorsese would laugh so hard every time. And say, Erwin, did you hear what Mike Starr said? I heard it, Marty. I heard it. And Thelma Schoonmaker, the greatest and Academy Award-winning editor, said to me, Marty, it was 3 cuts it made it, and the 4th one, he didn't want to do it. It was just a second or 2 over, something like that. Mike, when you see the film, you'll understand. And then when you see the film, the pacing with Ray looking up at the helicopters.
Yes, yeah.
You go, I get
it.
Yeah, every now and then, and this is 1989. Every now and then, I should have said one quick one. But
that's great.
That scene was magical, being in as Frenchie, and again created all of us together and research and people helping me from all sides of the world, and Robert De Niro feeding me softballs, and Martin Scorsese giving me the freedom, and it was just we had rehearsed this and that. But so that's, geez, I covered a lot there. But to answer the question, is another 20 minutes. I won't. I'll just do a minute. I felt that I didn't want to look back as I even tried to play football, which is a funny story. But and my brother Beau just said, "Oh, enjoy it." Because there was reasons I couldn't do it in high school that were physical, whatever. Yeah. But I was a walk-on and had a great time, and when pros ask actors a lot, actors say, "Oh, I would have been this, I would have been that" in baseball. I know I don't take the setup. I said, "Listen, let me tell you my athletic ability." I was the only guy that I know of in an NCAA that played in under a drama scholarship, and they crack up. I don't tell them, I could have done what you do. It's like people saying they could do, I could have been a combat veteran. Stop it.
Yeah.
So any of that stuff, if you were, you would have done it,
That's right.
So in my case, I said, you don't want to look back at a certain age and say, I would have been this if I didn't do this, or if the kids, I would have been this if my husband, my wife, or whatever, said we have the opportunity and the energy and the courage. I said, especially you, I said, to just do whatever. He said, you know what I'm going to put you through? I said, I couldn't want to put through, but this will be fun. And it wasn't always fun. There were times.
Hard.
I know what it's like to worry about where I'm going to get the rent. I remember in 1992 in the Bronx, and my wife's a second-year resident. And I go, Christ, what am I doing? Okay, I got it. I go to the Broadway Show League on a Thursday. It was every Thursday. John Goodman used to call me the mayor of Central Park, and the mayor because he would walk around quietly and sit there. John is so great, and he did such nice things for me in the past. And he would sit there and just watch quietly, but he'd see me clowning around, and I made more contacts, and I got in these leagues, and I had so much fun. And so I went there, and I said, "Is anyone leaving Guys and Dolls?" They said, "You wouldn't like this contract, Mike. It's terrible. They lock you out." I said, "No, I just need a job." And I remember they said, "No, we're not leaving yet." This and that. I remember walking out, getting a payphone by Central Park. You put in we had an answering service. That's what we had, no cell phone. And they'd say, "Seven Lively Arts, may I help you?" And they were all rooting for me. I said, "Yeah, anything there?" "Yeah, call your agent, Jonathan." Jonathan lives out in California. I said, really? So I've got a calling card or a bunch of quarters, I forget. He said, Mike, you remember meeting Blake Edwards? Yeah, I said, I had to do this thing that was I remember I had a
Pink Panther, yeah.
Yeah, and he said,
Yeah.
I only went to tell him I wanted to be in when he does the Broadway show of Victor Victoria, which didn't work out for a lot of it. They got a great guy, but I was doing that Irish mob thing, whatever. I'm not saying I would have done, but anyway, he said, yeah, you'd be great. So he said, yeah, I met him. He said, well, you know, on that Pink Panther? I said, yeah, there's nothing in it for me. He said, well, evidently he thinks so. I said, what am I playing? He goes, I don't know. But you have to be in Nice. This is 1992. You have to be in Nice on Sunday, Nice, France.
Wow.
What? And it's a Thursday. I didn't even have luggage. And our guy, not Stanley Green, I'm trying to think of his Green. His parents owned green luggage at Grand Central, and I literally got green bags. I had to buy.
Wow.
I probably borrowed money or used a credit card or something. And there I was, and I find myself and the people I met, and then I'm with Robert Davi, an old friend. We went to college together for a while and worked, and he had got me on something. And there I am in Europe, you know, and wow, I mean, the characters that drove me to the airport and the laughs we had, and I'm saying, and they didn't pick me up. So now I bring a couple of the kids home, eventually all three. My wife came over 3 times, one time for one night for our anniversary. She flew back. She was a resident, and you know who gave her great opportunities? We called them Mehmet in those days, Mehmet and Lisa Oz, Dr. Oz.
Wow.
And it was a Dr. King helped. There was a few people, Dr. Rose, but Dr. Oz really did so much, you know, and gave him. We used to go over his house. We used to do things, and what was I going to say? Yeah, so can you imagine? It's 1992, and I was going, okay, where am I going to get the rent? I'll pay this, I'll do that. Maybe I can work at a bar. Whatever. I don't know what I was doing. Borrow from friends or family. I can get this done. And I'm in Pelham Bay in the Bronx. And all of a sudden, a week or two later, my oldest daughter is walking on the beach with Julie Andrews.
Wow. Wow.
So it's kind of a I don't know if that answers, but it's kind of a thing like feast or famine, or like, you know, one day we're trying to figure out rent, then another day the kids are with me, and, you know, this British producer said, oh, you're going to spend all your money bringing your children out, aren't you? I said, yeah, what do you think? So I buy some special house or get a Rolls Royce like you. I said, you can never have this time again, because people would say, wait, you'll be back. And I said, no, you can never bring back this time.
Right.
And when I was in Japan, you can never take that away, that we did that. We may not have all the big things that people on this and that. You know what? You know, it's like that Alice Cooper song, you know, popcorn on TV. But we got to do things, and my wife was so busy as a resident, which plays into, again, how did I do? And the friends took my youngest daughter, and then my youngest daughter was able to come over to England. And so I didn't take them to Jordan. It was not a great time for that. It was like, you know, for me comfortable, it was 92, and, you know, when they had just been Persian Gulf. And I just decided I was alone there. We were in Jordan for a week or two, which I got to be in Petra because he used the Air Force. I mean, Blake Edwards, it was just phenomenal to be around him. And he was getting older and in a lot of pain with a lot of things, but just to be in the presence and the people that worked on it. Joe Dunn had been Peter Sellers' stunt double, and he was our coordinator. Greg Powell was my double and assistant stunt coordinator, and Greg wound up, you know, his family, the Powells, classics in London, but they wound up, you see their name on Raiders of the Lost Ark. And, you know, there's so many people. This guy, Roger Yuan, he wound up being in Shanghai Noon. He was a stunt guy and a martial arts guy they brought in because his teacher couldn't come there. And geez, we had another one, Bill Raisaki, who was known in, he was Japanese, but he was known in the 70s in California in the martial arts. It was just, you're around people. I became friends. Are you a Seinfeld fan?
Love Seinfeld, absolutely.
So you know the scene with the wheelchair? That's a stunt woman who's one of the greatest ever, Donna Evans.
Oh, okay.
We were friends, yeah. And she did a lot of stuff. She was Sharon Stone's double. We wound up reuniting when I worked on Gloria, and she was wonderful. And it was a magical mystery tour. So I guess you played it by the seat of your pants, smoke and mirrors, people would say. But now it's very hip to say about being president. It's very important, but you can't keep what might have been or what might be coming. You had to just, God, there was something. I remember when Mad Dog and Glory got pushed back a year, and I was counting on it. Right, that was right after,
Yeah.
and it was just amazing, magical, and it turned out to be a phenomenal experience. But I remember, I heard, oh Lord, and I said, what's the matter? And I said, oh, the film I was supposed to do, they can't, they put them out. I was feeling sorry for myself. And she said to me, and of course I was concerned about us. She said, I thought we agreed that, and none of this, and your business wouldn't, any of those things would never affect anything on us. In other words, she gave me support, and said, don't worry about something. Well, she used to tell me one time, I remember when I went for an audition, said, you don't need this job. And I went, what? And again, this is a hip way of thinking now, but I kept saying, what do you mean I don't need this job? We got to pay the rent. She goes, no, listen to me. You don't need this. And what she was kind of saying to me, which is what friend Phil Goldfarb, who had done everything, AD on Taxi Driver, producer, would tell me, you don't want to, especially in California, but this was in New York, never let them see you sweating. And you can't ever be desperation they can read, and that hungry feeling. You got to, most of the great stuff I've gotten is where I thought, no, I don't have this. It's the ones you go, yeah, okay, I can do that. I go, and they see it all over you. And I didn't realize how much he was saying. You can't go in desperate. You have to. Phil told me one time after this bad interview I had, where I screwed up every wonderful guy for the client, and he said, "Did you go to your knees, Mikey?" I said, "Well, I went to one knee." He said, "Listen, what's the worst disease out here right now in Chauvin's, California?" And of course I was saying, oh geez, AIDS is rough. He goes, no, it's unemployment. People stay in their cars. They do everything to avoid anyone. And if they smell it on you and they see you, they just want to get away. He said,
yeah.
You have to treat California. He said, I know you do theater in New York and all these things. He said, but you have to treat LA as if you're on a country club golfing. And you come up and say, hey, can I join you for something? This way Phil Goldfarb said it to me. And they say, no, okay, mind if I play through? I didn't even know what that meant then.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of it too, and sometimes the greatest things happen, and I don't get into and try to convince anyone about any type of philosophies or religion. I think it's simple enough that no one owns, what do they say? Even the religions don't own things on faith. There's a lot where you just have to have some kind of patience, and people can call it faith in life or whatever, whatever you want to call it, that you do your best. And what do they say? And what let the rest or whatever, and Captain Cranky, one of my best friends in the world, Brian, who coaches me on dialects, and he's got this book on Shakespeare and a few other things out now, and acting, and we met in college, and he would say to me, the old school guys always said, you got to do them and forget them.
yeah, that's true. As you're speaking, right? So
too much, right? I know.
No, no, not at all.
I'll do this 100 times for you.
Yeah, I have, and I'm thinking as you're speaking, I'm listening, and I'm fortunate because I reach out to people. You're kind enough to come on my podcast. People reach out to me. I gotta say, I'm looking at a man whose filmography is unbelievable. I mean, we haven't talked about Bodyguard and The Money Pit and the underrated Lean on Me, which your daughter probably appreciates being a teacher. I mean, I keep on and on. So you're a man with established credits, with quality credits. One of the best actors, of my time, certainly in what you've accomplished.
A lot of cutting room floors.
But I got to tell you, there are some times when I reach out to people for interviews and they have like 2 or 3 entries, and it's almost like I don't know what it is, like an arrogance. Some of the publicists too, like it's almost like they're Orson Welles. Like it's almost I can't like I. It's like, hey, I get it. I'm nothing special. I'm not Joe Rogan. I'm not, I get it.
Joe Rogan, an old friend, he sends nice things about me every now and then on the air. They tell me I get street cred. Yeah, I don't understand that.
I gotta tell you, Mike, I don't understand this. It's not even like an arrogance. It's like what like I want to promote you. If you don't want to come on, great. But it's the arrogance that comes out. It's like you have 2 or 3 credits, which there's nothing wrong with, because one of them I clearly like a lot if I'm asking somebody to be on the podcast. But
yeah,
I'm looking at a man who is so established, had these wonderful credits, life-changing movies, who's honest, who's humble. Why is, I mean, I guess you can't talk for other people, but where's that sense of being a humble person, being genuine, being kind? I sense that in other interviews.
I have a few theories on all of that. I'll give you a couple of great expressions that I hope people don't steal for scrap. I'm not that original, but one of them was, people used to say, like the old school Italian guys would say, "This guy thinks who he is," right? You get that. And then you get people who start believing their own press clippings, or they, that they're really those real people. Like they're a real cop, a real military guy, or a real, I mean, some are, or a real mob guy, whatever. Obviously, some are. All those expressions, don't forget where you came from, and this and that. I mean, just watch The Honeymooners; it'll teach you lessons.
Yeah.
And I think even Seinfeld episodes, Larry David shows things with people because I think one of the keys is not taking yourself seriously. And whatever, again, I don't want to push flux, but I mean, one of the things about certain, if I can say religious group, or just even studies, you take like a Zen monastery. No, everyone is the same. No one, and that's the way my wife treats patients. People fall over a famous person, and she's maintained that. And I also used to say, how can I take myself seriously? Like, oh, a casting director didn't like me, or someone said this, or someone said, oh, he just plays gangsters, or whatever it is, or something, or they said, oh, you're not right for it, or I didn't get the part. How can I take myself seriously over when it spans over, now 40 years or more of seeing situations and families that my wife has dealt with? It's like my friend Captain Cranky, Brian Rose, would say. He'd have a problem. He'd say, then again, I'm not looking for fresh water, and you want. I know I'm really going out. I must sound like the nuns used to, the nuns used to say, I cried when I had no gloves. I saw a man with no hands, whatever. But there is a point. I don't mean that, that you don't have issues or problems, but there's a danger where it's good to have confidence. People, I heard the other day, it's a fine line between the ego and confidence. It's good to be important. I tell people you have to have confidence. But when you take yourself seriously, I mean, turn on the news and see the Ukraine. I don't know what it is. I mean, that you're so special.
Yeah.
And again, I remember way back when, I remember working in a gym, and the guy wasn't a bad guy. Someone said, oh, he's an actor. And I said, I asked for advice, and people would just be offhanded. Sometimes some people would be awesome. But I'll never forget this guy said, oh, just do a showcase. He didn't want to talk to me. And I remember I got my first commercial. I was with Jeffrey Tambor, and the guy was an extra on it, which I don't knock this and that. I've been extra this. But he came and said, what are you doing here? I said, well, I'm one of the actors here, and I didn't say, that it's nonsense, but I don't know. I think a lot comes from upbringing. People would say, oh, that person became an asshole. That person became a pompous ass and changed. And someone you say, including me, maybe that person always was like that, but was covering it up.
I agree. I like that. I like that.
The first job I ever did was cruising with Billy Freakin'. Boy, what a controversy. I mean, I should say in New York. I mean, I did Bushido Blade, which I learned so many lessons on. That was in Japan, right?
Yeah.
Living in the projects, and I get this thing thanks to between people in the health spa, ex-cops, Art Shamsky, the ex-Met, But I remember, and again, I don't want to get political, but I know President Obama got in trouble saying no one does it alone.
Yeah.
I mean, when you have that attitude, and please, I'm not getting right, left, or anyone. It's a statement that I agree with about people. I think that I don't know. I don't know how to answer that, but I was about to say, so working on cruising, and Joe Spinell, God rest his soul, what a character. He taught me like so much street stuff about getting work. It's such Joe was he was Rocky's loan shark in the first Rocky. He did.
All right.
Joe was in the Godfathers, like, he had brings, I think, Frankie Five Angels family from Italy.
I got it.
So Joe was really special. He was such a character, such a real deal. And I introduced him to Irish people, Irish character, American. But he was, so anyway, he had this friend, Luke, who had been like a Brinks or Wells Fargo guy, had been injured. And Joe was trying to get him to act. He was one of the sweetest guys. Now I'm just starting out. What do I know? My late 20s and not knowing what to do. Had the theater scouts trying to, and my theater teacher, actually, the chairwoman, Miriam Toon, put me up in front of the class and said, this young man could work right now in the film business. He's what people call a natural right now. Self-praise is no recommendation. My grandmother said, so self-praise stinks. But Mrs. Toolin said that, Miriam Toolin said that, and she was chairman, said, but Michael insists he wants to be an actor. I used to see theater, they bring it around the projects. I said James Earl Jones, Roscoe Lee Brown, Cleavon Little, and theater was magic to me. And my brother saw me in a high school play at a girls' school and insisted that's what I would do. I said, no, I'm going to play football. I'm going to do this. He goes, no, that's out. Music and theater, that's the thing. Music and actors, right? And he kept pushing me to the point of ambushing me and with the drama department after a Jets practice. And anyway, where was that? So this fellow Luke I got to be friends with. And one day he said an interesting thing. Him, and then years later, this Japanese shiatsu therapist, classic guy up in Seattle. But Luke said to me, you're really like this. So what do you mean? He said, you're going to have a hard time in this business. Joe takes me around, and when people are around, directors and producers, they all act friendly and nice, and they kiss ass, but they're not like that with everybody else.
Yeah.
He was a street guy, Luke. He said, but you're the same with everybody. I said, is that okay? He goes, oh, no, it's great, but people aren't going to believe you. And it's always made me, it's funny, he said, people won't believe you, that guy. And it's almost made me reticent. Like, I've had people who really like me give me their phone numbers and I wouldn't call. And it was crazy because, it was probably not a really good choice on mine. Like Jim Carrey, Johnny Depp. And I feel, what am I going to do? Hey, hi, I'm here. Hey, I'm the guy who was in the film. I don't know. It's crazy to me.
Yeah.
But, and years later, there's different people said, Sincere said, there's a lot of people it's going to scare. And again, I'm not trying to make myself look like St. Christopher or Saint whatever. Oh, that's right. They banned him. That was my confirmation. I'm not trying to say I'm like always the nicest guy or the pure. I do my best, and I've done stupid things in my life, said stupid things to people. But I think there's a point where you I don't know. Everyone's, I don't like to be offhanded. And I can remember probably almost every time I was wrong with someone and if I've been rude sometimes, it's because I'm a space cadet and I daydream. Someone said, I was trying to talk to you one. I said, what? I said, no, I said, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that. And you learn, when I was on Bushido Blade, I was so influenced by Richard Boone, also by my dad and mom too, and my brothers, that and neighborhood people would never let you. What are you kidding me? One time I worked a year after Goodfellas. We did this with John Mahoney, who was one of the finest, most talented people, and Dennis Farina. I think we're best friends. Dennis, talk about these two guys. Dennis was so special.
Great actor.
Yes, a great person. 16 years as a homicide cop.
That's right. Before he went into acting, right? He was like an older,
Yeah, he used to say Mike Starr, because him and John Mahoney did theater. Mike Starr, Chicago used to be my town. Now I go into restaurants and they say, Mike Starr eats here.
Yeah.
Him and Joe Montagna. You just
that's a career jump, Mike. Whew, from 16 years as a detective to acting.
And he saw something. I think he said, this is enough. And him and John used to prank each other. But why did I mention John? Help me out here. We were in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And I'll forget, there was this classic character. He was in Thief, Tommy Signorelli. He was a off-the-wall guy, but very interesting actor and had a great sense of humor about himself. And one day I was there and I was on the set, and I just happened to be, maybe I was trying to impress other people that were working on crew. I don't know, whatever. But I was walking off the set, and I had this walk. He pokes his head out the trailer. He goes, "So is that your trailer walk?" And there's a lot of people that act like nice guys on interviews, but then, or humanitarians, but then you see them treating people. And I'm not saying I'm always perfect, but then you see them treating people that are in power, whether they're actors, producers, directors, whatever. That, I mean, I've made stupid, clumsy jokes, I know, where I think, what? I didn't mean that, or maybe took things personal, but consistently you can see who are good. And there's people that, I don't know, I don't know what it is. You can't.
No, you've articulated it good. You really have. I get what you're saying. I
had an actor tell me one day in Buffalo on Mice and Men, Bob Donnell, he had been a Korean War veteran. He was out of I think with Christine Baranski and everybody in St. Louis, and he was a special character. People didn't know him that well, but he was among the theater people in regional theater. And one day, gave me a big lecture because I was such a method guy, and I was reverting myself. He says, "Hey, man, you can't do it. Try to be bad one night, okay?" He says, "But you can't." He said, "Just put on your Lenny hat and your overalls. You got it. You've done all the work." But he said to me, let's face it, what we do is the silliest, stupidest, most ridiculous thing on earth, And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "But sometimes it can be the most magical and most beautiful."
I agree.
That's the way you look at it. That then dual yin yang. People have all these yin yang things, but you see it. I don't know. It's just you could walk out, get killed, whatever. What do you want to leave as a legacy? But like these fortune cookies or these things on tea bags on herbal tea say, but leave love behind you. I'd rather be remembered, and it's paid off in other jobs actually, not because I was trying to. But then again, you just remember where you were. And it's funny about Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan was always like that. We worked on this baseball show, Hardball, that could have been great. It's all about timing. And the original ideas was great. The writers produced. We had super talents on it. But Joe wasn't fair. People said, "Who is this guy anyway?" Joe was always like the way he is. He's very sincere, outspoken, whether people agree. I've had people on all different sides of a story go, "What your friend said today." I haven't seen it in years, but what this, or hey, it was really great. Did you ask? I said, no, he was just that, but it's not like he wasn't in a position one time, he would get up and do comedy wherever, you know what I mean? He was always good to people, I got to tell you. But, someone was an asshole. He didn't care what they were. He would just tell people, "Get the fuck out of here." He was like that all the time. Yet he stood up. He'd stand. Me and I stood up when they were trying to replace the writers. I mean, he always had balls. So I wanted to say that. So I didn't even think when you say, I didn't think, well, who's this guy? I didn't even look at it. Emily said, "Oh, he seems nice." Da, da, da. And I said, "Yeah, why not?" And it's not like I'm in desperate. I enjoy this and I enjoy sharing stories. But when someone's treating you with such respect, what are you going to say? "Yeah, well, what is it? How many views does he have? How many likes?" I mean, it's fun. I love this.
Yeah. And it's funny because I'm a big man. I can handle no, like that's fine. But it's the people. It's the people that like string. It's a weird, it's just weird. But speaking on Joe Rogan, I love him for this reason. I love him for many reasons, but I love him for this. He was talking to Bill Maher yesterday.
Massachusetts.
Yes, he was talking. He was talking to Bill Maher, and what they were Bill Maher. Everyone, it said they say he's to the left, but he goes, "You know what?" He goes, "I've been the same guy I've always been." He goes,
"Yep."
He goes, "The left just got wacky." And he's kind of right. Like, if you want to go on a talk show and you're a celebrity, every late night show, and there's nothing wrong with this, I guess, is from a certain political
I agree.
stance. So it's like good. And Joe Rogan was trying to make this point. He's like, good. And so was Maher. They were like, good luck with that. And I like the fact that Joe will bring anybody on, have a civil discussion.
Bill says that a lot.
Yeah,
Bill
not throw cheap shots, not be disrespectful. Just, hey, we differ politically. Let's have a discussion. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, which is very hard to do.
Yes, to me,
like my friend Gary McMillan said, your guy Joe will bring on. My friend used to work with Johnny Carson back in the day, but he said your friend Joe will bring on, and I like when people call him my friend. I don't call him up and say, "Hey Joe, can you get me on the show?" I don't mean that, but he brings people on and asks them questions. And if all of a sudden people say, this is ridiculous what he said. He brings in different points of view,
Yeah.
even
Yep.
whatever, scientifically. He asks people.
Yep.
And he
And,
wants to learn.
and for that reason, I can't like watch Stephen Colbert. It's like unwatchable to me. It's not because
Interesting.
because he's just so, it's just like a beat down on the right, beat down. And if anybody dares, it's just ridiculous. And I'm not going to
See,
get
that's the
political.
tough thing. And then you have the situation with Fox where people only
Yeah,
go
I
down
agree.
all
Totally.
of them, but it is very true. And I used to be a Colbert fan, and it's not that if he called me and asked me on the show, I would jump there.
Yeah.
I would want one thing I'd make clear, because that I don't want to. Oh God, I mean, I almost take a Michael Jordan attitude. I don't. If you think something is really horrible, I mean, I'm not talking politics like human rights and this and that. That I understand, where people want to make a statement. But when it's always slanted one way,
Yes.
I mean, Steve Allen was a very progressive person, but he brought on Lenny Bruce and Bob Einstein in the beginning, and Albert Brooks, but he brought on interesting commentators where people said something that wasn't like, trashing all the time. He brought on like really thoughtful people, if you like, people don't even realize, and would discuss I'm talking about during Vietnam and before, and this and that. And he had a point of view, but he didn't hammer it, and he usually worked from humor. But
Mike, even Carson never talked politics.
That's what I was getting to. Carson avoided that because my friend worked with Carson, and he'd
Yeah.
make fun of everyone, like
That's
the way
what I'm
Will
saying.
Rogers would.
But we've got to a time where it's like, people have tough days. Late night TV used to be, okay, let me watch Letterman. Let me see some stupid pet tricks. Let me watch Carson talk to some farmer from Iowa. Now it's like, oh, great, more beatdown political. Like it's exhausting.
Letterman would make fun of Bush and Hillary Clinton.
That's right. And Dave's changed now, but you're right. In the heyday, he was a fun guy to watch. But now it's like, it's unwatchable late night TV. It's completely and I love Jimmy Kimmel. Even Jimmy Kimmel's unwatchable. Jimmy Kimmel's unwatchable now too, and I love him. I love Jimmy Kimmel.
That's an interesting view. Again, if any of them ask me, because I don't want to say I would watch them, and then all of a sudden they call me up or something.
No, this is my view, not yours. This is my. This is not on you.
But I understand how that can all this can upset you. That's why people start watching either BBC or just local news, because there was a time, my friend who's a musical conductor, composer, and very well read, and he has a political point of view. He said, but there was a time, whether it was the FCC or something, when the news, hopefully, was just the news and not all commentary and opinion, right, left, this, MSNBC, Fox, and this and that, CNN, whatever, all having one point of view. And just what you said, bringing on people. And that's what Joe does. And Ma tries to do. And actually, Ma goes easier a lot of times on people with the right-wing point of view. It's really funny. He goes,
I've come to love Bill Maher. I've come to love him. I've come to,
I worked on a soap, and for a while there, when my friend Mike Bottaluca went on Boardwalk Empire, I jumped in. They needed a mom. Say, hey, great, work is work, and it was some wonderfully talented people on. But Bill's show would be CBS Television in Hollywood, and his manager, and it's another one, said, here, give me your, I'll get your tickets, this, and then I kept saying, okay, and I didn't want to say, hey, Bill, your manager told me, but I used to get to hear the rehearsals, or if I filmed later or taped later, I would see. I'll never forget. I saw at the time D.L. Hughley, James Carville, and Mr. Steele. I'm trying to think of his first name. He used to be one of the heads of the Republican Party, this and that. And they all came by, and I know people say, "Oh, that's Steele. He's a Republican, whatever." But I walked up to they came up to me. I had met D.L. Hughley on a flight, and then I saw James Carville. I had seen him in New York a few days before, and I had to fly out. And I always said something nice if I saw him. He must be going, who the hell is that guy? I swear I met a guy like that. But all three I found very solid. And at the time, I can't think of Steele's first name, an African-American guy. And he had a strong Republican view at the time, whatever, But I'm going to listen to all three. But it's funny. I would hear the rehearsals, and then without Bill Maher, and you'd hear the writers. And it was right behind the curtain. And then I would hear his monologue. If one of the rare times I would work late, and it would be so much fun. I'd hide over and and listen behind the curtains. And yeah, I really appreciate what he's done. And it doesn't mean I have people say, oh, he's an asshole, he's this and that. It has nothing to do, some things you may agree, disagree, but at least he tries to bring on a lot of different.
Yeah, I agree.
And I always like when he says, he just recently said it. Did you see he had David Mamet on, which was very interesting?
Yeah. Yep.
And when his classic thing, and again, when he said, listen, you want to hate Trump. I don't like the word hate, but he said, you want to hate Trump, that's fine. Don't hate his supporters. You know what I mean? And
right.
And Mamet went, okay, good enough, and whatever, or, whether it's Bush or Biden and this and that, people, all of a sudden you gotta, no one agrees. As Frank Renzulli says, can we just admit we're two sides of the same coin? And I was talking to my friend Jeff Hogan in Chicago today, and he was just saying, I want to be in the Senate, but I just, all of a sudden I can't be friends with something if I don't think this or I think that,
It's gross.
That's
gross.
What's gotten crazy.
It's
gross.
So
it's, I totally get what you're saying. I don't want to be personal about people who I really like. I don't tend, it's only because of the lifestyle here too, where a lot of times on sports, or I get more into like meditative talks or things about awareness. And I have to confess, I'll watch reruns of Curb and Seinfeld. It's like, but I do, I'll catch things. I'll maybe catch a monologue, of people here and there, or funny things, but I just don't want to get in embedded in people's wars constantly and points of view. I mean, they're all funny things,
Non-stop. Yep.
So it's interesting. And back to with you, when someone has done such research and respect, I don't know what's so hard about talking to someone for I can talk for 4 hours and filibuster, but I don't know what's hard for someone just to sit in their place and take a phone and iPad and have a discussion.
Yeah.
It's they also should realize that, because I don't know. I mean, and I don't mean to limit you. You said that you're not Joe Rogan, this, that, but I mean, they don't know. And also, I tell people, and it's again from not a greedy, self-centered point of view, but I have to tell you, PAs who became producers or people like that, or ADs like Ray Donovan. I get on Ray Donovan all of a sudden. It's one of my favorite.
Great show. Great show.
And I played an Irish American guy with a Boston accent.
Loved it. And
played a guy with you were supposed to. I love playing things where you're not sure, like in The Office. What is he really? Which was just a complete dream.
What an iconic character in The Office. What an iconic character.
Thanks to the people on it and the writer.
I had David Denman on the show. He was in The Office. He was a big character, and there's a Mike, and that's the thing. Like, if they look at my IMDb, if they look at the 7 years of work I've done, like, I'm not like a hack who turns this. Like, I bust my ass, and there's tons of podcasters that bust their ass, and this is why I love Joe Rogan. Where those other talk show hosts use this, it's nonstop. Joe listens. Joe listens, and that's what makes a great. I'm not saying I'm a great interviewer, but that's what makes Joe Rogan great, is that he listens, and that's his key, and he's so well thought out.
And he thought my brother Beau, and my friend Louis Lombardi, who you'd see a lot of his work, 24 Sopranos, he would get the biggest kick out of my friends, and he'd come around, but he'd honestly say things, but he just loved my little group, my world, when I was in Burbank, coming back, and he just treated everyone like gold. He treated my wife and my kids so well, and the kids.
That's awesome. That's awesome to hear.
And he always had respect, and just, again, we all start somewhere, but I'm, you're saying 7 years, so I don't consider you a beginner, but if you were, that'd be okay too.
That's right. You're right. You got it. You nailed it. It's just, and I want to say, the people that 98% of the people on my podcast, or even 100, are so kind to give me anytime. Like, I'm so grateful. It's just, it's unbelievable. Mike, let me get to a little bit of your filmography here. I'm going to throw a couple for those listening on a podcast, because this will drop on YouTube and on iTunes. I'm about to show Mike a couple pictures of couple stills of Dumb and Dumber. You mentioned the word lunatics earlier. Tell me about these two lunatics.
Jeez, I'm about 30 pounds heavier than that, but
just as good looking. Tell me about those two guys.
Okay, who do I start with first? Jeff when the camera stopped, like I was so impressed because I knew his work, this and that. I didn't mean to start because I want to go backwards or forwards. It's not. They were the same to me in different ways. And Jeff, this was such a departure for him, and it's so funny because you'll hear him interviewed, and people, all this work he's done, and people want to talk about that with you, and he just laughs. He had his own theater at the time, and we laughed, but he was very quiet on set, kept himself, except when the Farrelly brothers would bring someone from hockey. The Farrelly brothers had an eclectic group of friends, and then I introduced them to some characters, in basketball and this and that. But they would, family, friends. I mean, the Farrelly brothers, there's an example of people who didn't take themselves there and didn't forget where they came from, and they still do wonderful things for people.
They seem like that. From the outside, Provident. They seem like that.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I haven't seen them in years. They'll say nice things about me.
Yep.
Or someone, my man runs a restaurant, say, oh, geez, I heard about you guys, in the family. Oh, say hello to Mike. So it's not like I'm trying to pump them or getting a job. But Jeff would be like keep to himself. But here he is with his hair and everything. And he was a very quiet guy in some ways, but then he'd open up, and I'd have people. I worked with someone, they said, oh, you work with Jeff Daniels, he's still whatever, he really was quite, he whatever. And I'd say to him, I'd tell him, I'd go right back to him, tell him, I believe when people are saying shit, if you someone cares about, oh, I went right back to him, and he said, Mike, what the does everyone have to be a cut up on it? Not like that,
Yeah.
And he was great, though, to be with. And I actually got him one day really good because Jim would be doing all this stuff. And Jim, the times I had with him, stories I could tell, hysterical. And you look at all the work he's in, and he's a real, both of them are so deep and everything and constantly evolving,
And I don't know how you hold it together. I don't even know how you hold it together working with these guys. Like,
there's a lot of biting my lip or thinking bad things. So that, and then there's ad lib. Yeah, I mean, I didn't know the first time they screamed in my ears. Well, they work so greatly together, and you take. I remember one time Jeff was just like this, right? And Jim's doing about it. He's doing all these bits and having fun with people, and both were perfectly fine with me. And I'm sitting in between them while we're waiting to set the cameras. So I think there was one point Jim was out of the car. That's right, he was out of the van. Whatever when we were in the van. It's great. And Jeff was like that. It's not like he was ever rude to me. We talked this and that.
Right.
But he had his head against it, and he was kind of resting. So, sense of humor I have with my brothers and everybody and neighborhood guys. So I start leaning over to the camera guy. I said, you got both eyes? What is that, a 60 you're shooting with? And sometimes people didn't get what I was doing. I'd say, you got a 60. I said, what do you got there? Are you catching me? That's a half a cowboy. And I start throwing all these terms that mean nothing. Jeff is still like this. And I'm going, yeah, when we're going to do the gag with the stunt, and okay, I come right up there, and what is it, like a 45-degree angle you put the and I'm just talking nonsense. And the crew knew me. Finally, Jeff gets up out of this. You'd think he was fully asleep. He goes, shut the fuck up. He starts laughing. What the fuck are you talking about? And we wound up having laughs. I used to do a takeoff on how stunt coordinators from the West Coast would talk. A lot of them saved my ass many times, but there'd be guys in there directing. I'll tell you, just put your camera there. And he was writing a play. Said, do you mind coming to the trailer? Because I need some good stunt talk, Yeah. Talking about people there's so many classic people, and on the Bodyguard, people looked out for me, and I'd break balls, and they would laugh, I would stunt guys, and I'd say, okay, and camera people, again, it's humor and not taking yourself serious. So Jeff, really, when you think of things he did on that, the Farrelly brothers, I first flew in, there was Cam Neely, Hall of Fame hockey player, Hall of Fame human being, I'd say, and I didn't even know it. And watching hockey, and I'm waiting for them. They got late on the set. They said, wait for us, we're going to have dinner. And they showed me footage. The first things I saw is I remember Jeff's being stuck, tongue is being stuck, right? And then And then the other one is that snowball fight.
Yeah.
And I knew we were in for something. That is, to me, one of the funniest scenes ever because they always have those lovely stories. And he's this
He gets
maniac.
so pissed. He gets
And
so
Lawrence Green-
pissed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought that was one of the funniest things I'd ever seen. You know, I love when people say, "Oh, I don't like the movie. You know, I wouldn't watch anything called Dumb and Dumb." I said,
Oh, they're missing out, and they're idiots. So
yeah,
it's a.
and I can't tell you. I used to have like 100 posters I glommed from. I can't tell you how many people of all ages and still kids, whatever, people in hospital, whatever, that it's been useful to go in and talk to someone and be that guy. It's such a responsibility, but to be able to do that, like my wife said, as a kid, won't talk to anyone. I got to bet I know the bad guy in Dumb and Dumber, get your butt over here. That was the early days in Chicago.
Yeah.
And it worked out well, you know.
Yeah.
And you'd get laughs or talk to people. And it's not like I think I'm Babe Ruth or that I think I'm, you know, the greatest, this and that. It's just, if it helps, it's great. So you have that. And then you have Jim. Oh, God. He would tell me about his life and his childhood. His father was a great, really excellent, accomplished jazz musician, but couldn't get work. And
Yeah, it was no joke. Yeah.
And he would tell me stories. And I guess I can tell this story because he told it. But he would say, I said, you know, I used to ask him, I said, there's different cultures, different humors. And I said, for some reason, I think that, you know, because the Canadians were amazing. And he was amazed that Optimus Prime was, and his brother Larry was a friend of mine who was a Marine, God rest his soul, and highly educated classic guy. But Peter Cullen, when I told him I knew Peter Cullen, he said he opened it up for Canada. So we had really heavy talks, but he'd also say, I'd say that, you know, like there's a certain humor Mel Brooks came out of, and a certain immigrant and Jewish American in New York, this and that, you know, and Payne and this and that, and you go back to the 30s and 40s, you know, different style, Yiddish theater. And I said also, there's an extremism of humor with Irish Catholics or neighborhood guys I knew. People were all funny. And, you know, like, it's like, I think Barry Levinson said when he did a separate piece, the one in Northern Ireland about the Protestant and the Catholic together, who I knew this guy, Barry, who wrote it and worked him. And I think he said something like, Lou DiGiamo, God rest his Kestner, told me, he said, everybody's a good actor here in Ireland. You know, different, everyone, you just bring everyone in, like the one they did about, Jamie Sheridan did about it was something to America. You know, people would come in and never acted, but they would have this way. A lot of Brits, different cultures, you know. So I said, did you find that, you know, there's a lot of humor comes out of pain? I said that, you know, sometimes I was trying to analyze it, you know, and struggles, whether it's any group. I mentioned, you know, you take someone like Mel Brooks, said Caesar would talk about, you know, and coming out of a history and he said, well, you know, did you ever see Living Color when we would have the dysfunctional family and I'd stick my head in the oven, they'd stick the head in the oven, this and that. I said, I've heard stories like that.
Fire Marshal Bill.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I believe God, this is a personal story, but I feel it's okay because Jim has spoken a lot. I believe his grandfather, oh God, I'm taking a chance saying this because he told me personally, so it wasn't like I said, never tell anyone this. He said, I believe his grandfather would come over and tell everybody he loved them and this and that. And if he started drinking, perhaps he might have started not agreeing with an artistic musical career for his father, if I can put it that way.
Right.
So Jim said he would make his brothers and sisters laugh, if I'm remembering the story right. And I hope I'm not telling anything horrible, besmirching anyone's memory. But I think there might be a point, you know, we've had that uncle or relative that drinks so much and starts complaining about what, but Jim would do this. He'd go, I love you. You're a fucking asshole, loser, you this and that, whatever. He would do this thing. Now,
yeah,
that was based on his grandfather, might have been. So let me tell you the next step. He'll see me in public. I could be getting interviewed or talking to people. And he'd walk right up and either do this to me. You are such a liar, and disappear. He wasn't super famous then. You know, he was known, Ace Ventura. And
yeah.
But then he'd come up to me and he'd back off and go, I love you, you fucking asshole. And people, it's strangers there. And he'd go, and he'd smile and go, and he would do shit to me. He even, he had his gallbladder taken out on the, I believe it was, and he was like, "Cool, check it out." And then, I went to the hospital with him, and the tabloids had him like this, begging and crying. And I said, "Doesn't that bother you?" He goes, "No, Mike, check it out. Cool. Who cares?" And you hear various views. He has this and that, and I think one of the best shows ever is Seinfeld Coffee with Comedians.
Oh,
And
great show. Yeah,
they tell how they feel. So I think seeing both of them, that's what you need to know. I mean, I love that Jeff's what was it, the Newsroom or something? But he's
Newsroom is fantastic. Newsroom is fantastic. Right? Yes,
tremendous.
Three seasons. HBO, one of the best shows ever.
On it. Yes, and then you take someone like Jim's stuff, whether it's the Truman Show. He really went out there. And Andy,
Kaufman.
When you go, wow. Yeah. And so like you said, I'm with two people. I understand, though. I have funny stories how I even got this part, but the Farrelly brothers said we want it, but Jim insisted on having a real actor who had played someone like this. Yes. So I mean, all right. So I did, but I tried to always do it real. I didn't go whoa, unless it was a real whoa, Yeah. And I think they both came from a sense of reality that people don't realize, and everybody else in it, but they didn't want. I don't think I played it for like, hey, how funny am I? It's that classic character in the 40s. Like I learned so much from George Roy Hill on Funny Farm, but I mean, it's that classic guy who's the serious guy in the middle, maybe the butt of the Marx Brothers jokes and this and that, but also that you want to believe that this guy can be dangerous. Yeah. And he's doing a terrible thing with poison, this and that. You know what I mean? And then they're finding humor. You walk a fine line there. So that's the way I tried to play it, and I heard Jim wanted me, and even at one point wanted me for something in Ace Ventura, but whatever, at the end of this agency, there was something lost in the translation or something. An agent or something said, no, he's not available. I said, you got to be kidding me, Jim. And so I had really good, solid talks and time with them. But you could see you're in the middle of something. I mean, when they're going, pills are good. How do you not laugh? But I was like, trying to think. You think bad things or whatever. I don't know. Whatever.
So you stole my next question. So two, in my opinion, not because we're speaking, but two of the three funniest scenes, and there's probably a zillion funny scenes. Like you don't go like now with comedies. I've said this before. I can't think of a good comedy. Like I feel like a good comedy now has 5 good laughs. Dumb and Dumber has 5 good laughs after the first 3 minutes, and it's like so. It's like. So the two of the funniest scenes are with you, right? You mentioned one, pills are good. And I thought I read this, and for those listening or watching, it'd be interesting to hear this story. You talked about being ad-lib, using ad-libbing,
Yeah.
I heard that this scene was ad-libbed. If that's the case, Mike, that means that scream had to catch you off guard. If that's the case, so. Tell me from your point of view, were you startled? Were you what was your reaction when Carrey decides to give you the most annoying sound of the noise in the world?
The thing is, in for a penny, in for a pound, right? And if you have, you take the level that we're a Second City with Steve Carell comes from, and wonderful actors and that, but you take people like Bill Murray, all these people that. My friend Mike Haggerty out of Second City, who does such great work. I'm just giving an example. They had to be ready for anything. And to me, in Goodfellas, I felt ready for anything. And I learned from Barry Levinson. You're supposed to be totally present. Now, I don't want to make it. I've had people say to me, it's one of the greatest ad-lib scenes. I'm actually I still try to remember, and I'd love to ask Farrell, how much was scripted in that. But right. I can't say that because they would do stuff like Jeff would start with the ketchup and the mustard or something. I think I can't remember who's up, but and then Jim would jump, but they would jump, and you had to, that's when you talk about great. And again, I don't want to make it sound like the Farrelly brothers didn't prepare all this and they made it up. But I've had people say, I heard that's one of the greatest ad lib. The thing about that, we had to reshoot something, I think, because the fur was too low, but I would say the first time, I remember, you have to go with it. If you're all these cliches and all the training, that people have is that you got to stay present no matter what happens.
Right.
I've been on stage when something breaks or falls. I mean, when you work with Nathan Lane and they deal with everything, and Matthew Broderick, you deal with certain things, and you see when you watch something like The Honeymooners that wasn't rehearsed and live, and something breaks them on this cheap set or whatever, you see them go with it. You see Art Carney or Audrey Mills cover things or do things or an ad lib. So I think if you're, again, someone would say, "Oh, he's talking so deeply about Dumb and Dumber," but I think if you treat everything the same and you find a place of reality, what would happen now? Here's this dangerous guy. You know your place in the story, as Miriam told me to say to me. You know how important it is. You know what's going on here and who these guys are, but you don't know them. So you know that I can't just say, "Oh, that was so funny what he did," and ruin something.
Right.
Like, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you yelling at my? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
you gotta be totally in there, and also trust not only the family but these two brilliant guys next to you that you're gonna go with it. No one's trying to hurt me. No one's trying, and it's just so perfect because here's this. The more I can be real, this murderer, it seems, you don't kill who you don't know, but it's trying to find out who these guys are. Like I say to Karen Duffy was great. I say, you don't kill who you don't know. That's a rule. I love lines like that.
Yeah.
But if you're totally into it and know who your guy is, it just comes to you. It comes to, that you have to play it. What would I do? And you don't have all this time to think about it. He starts screaming in my ear, and then Jeff joins in. Yeah. And then people have given me, I know I like to think that, and people still, you see it on commercials where, not that I'm the first person that ever said this line, but I went, guys, it's like, finally after they do it, you go with it. It's like music or jazz improvisation or whatever, and jazz is scripted. I mean, people know it, but I mean, you've got to really be able to go along with it. Does that make sense?
It does. And let me tell you, anybody minimalizing this movie, this is a beautifully shot movie. There's some scenes where Carrey's, on the motorcycle and it pans. It's a beautifully shot movie. This is no joke. I mean,
stunt wise too. And you think about Fred Stoller, right? With the get off the phone, right? It was my idea from a friend told me a story about something that similar happened. But I had broken my finger in Central Park playing softball. Oh, God, Mr. Marino gave me a lecture on that. My friend had no more softball for you. But I had it wrapped, and you had to punch through what they call candy glass.
Right.
And I'd been dealt with candy glass once or twice before, but I was like, holy shit. And if you want to have fun, since you're a fan of the movie, freeze frame it. There's the stunt coordinator doubles Fred. So when he got that idea off the phone. Fred's written on Seinfeld and been on Everybody Loves Raymond. I mean, super talent. When he presses his face against, the stunt guy had to take it. Now, I had to get it exactly right. Not only to hurt, not to hurt him, not to hurt, my hand hurt enough. You're going to get through it. Hey, it was my fault to have a broken. But you smash through this, and then they had to resheet the whole thing. So you had to get everything just right. And this stunt corner just timed it perfectly that it looks like, he's getting hit in the face through it. And it's such a comical, great moment, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't mean because of me, but, there's this and Fred, the way he gets off the, Farrelly, Bobby and Peter came up to me. Peter said, you're going to work with this guy, Fred Stoller. He's a stand-up comic from Brooklyn. He said, and the type of material he does, he talks about living with his mother, and he goes, ooh, I'm living on the edge now. When I mail a letter, I don't even double check to see if it went through. And that's an old thing. When we were way back when, the people would have to mail and always make sure it got in, And he says, I don't do that. They were giving me the way he talks and the way, and then we start working with Fred. And when I keep ignoring him, and he goes, oh, don't you do that to me. He doesn't know. And this has happened in the world where people don't know who they're dealing with.
Yes, guy, I agree. And I can't let this go either. So we talk Chicago. I think John Hughes, for those listening on the podcast, I'm going to just show you something really quick. those watching on YouTube. The late John Candy, You Were the Clown in Uncle Buck, which is a phenomenal movie. Classic.
I gotta grab water. John Candy, one of the best people ever. Almost another Second City. I
was going to say Second City.
And I was an SCT fanatic more than I was a. What did I get out of the shot here? Let me see.
No, you're here. I put a picture up just of you and you and John Candy. Yeah.
He would let me do bits. I would tell him my favorite stuff, like Joe Flaherty and Dave Thomas. I'd tell him my favorite things, and they would do. John started doing them, doing takeoffs, and that scene was scripted, but also John would ask me, like, oh God, we're like Winnetka, where he's from. It was like one of the richest neighborhoods in Chicago, not in that area. And John Hughes would say, Mike, I want you to just keep on. I don't care what you say, whatever. Say whatever you want to get John out of there. And John Candy, to annoy me, my character, he'd go, I've got a cake in the oven. I'll be right out. And I go, you low-life lion, sack of shit. Now, not everything made it. Some of it made Christmas Vacation, in fact, for Chevy Chase later on.
He said 4 Flushing. Wait, you said 4 Flushing. And Chevy he says 4 Flushing in Christmas Vacation.
And I'm not trying to cause trouble, but my daughter Cassie said, Dad, they were using your stuff. My friend Freddie Gillot, old school Buffalo guy, Warren, Pennsylvania, power lifter who broke me into, he'd get me bouncing jobs. Nothing ever happens. We worked in the gym together. I said, please, Fred, I can't do this. Classic character. But we would do this whole thing. He goes, why, you 4 flushing phony sack of shit. So I did that. I called him that. And Hughes loved it so much. And my daughter said, Dad, you got to see Christmas Vacation. They say the stuff like Freddie talks, and you talk made up. So yeah, and I'm not saying, oh God, I wrote that line. I don't mean that. John loved it, and he gave it.
No. Yeah, I get it. Yeah,
I don't want to make. Oh
no. Iconic scene though. And John Candy seems like a wonderful guy, Mike. Just a wonderful man.
And what's funny? John Candy had the most eclectic, interesting, assorted. When I say entourage, people that had help, assistants, so kind. They were like in heaven being with him. And, eventually whatever habits he had in his life, I don't know, but he was so kind and so kind to people and made it work. And he threw in stuff. And Bob Elmore was his stunt double and eventually would double me in something, and drop weight. But Bob, I had a guy, I'm trying to think of his name, but I show up and I said, it's my first time in Chicago. And I hung out with the guys. And my stunt double had and I'll tell you why I need stunts, because it was cut out. But my stunt double had a virus or a flu. He was laying on the floor in the trailer. And I did the Mike Starr bluff. I said, well, I can do my own. And he goes, oh, thanks. And I went, uh-oh. And Bob was careful, but it was freezing, rock hard ground. And what John wanted was a real good fight with me. And Bob was careful with me, but he was a judo guy, this and that. And believe me, I didn't get hurt, but we had to do things. And I remember I had a little bruise here, and he was so good. But we wound up doing this great fight. I don't know, my wife must have it somewhere, I hope. But when he brought me in for a quick scene in Baby's Day Out, John gave me a clip of what he cut out to the song "It's Your Birthday." I had a big fight with John Candy, on camera. And we did this big stunt fight to the point where he's beating me with my shoe on my ass as I'm trying to crawl away. And I'd like to think that John said I should have never cut it out, but it's really a funny fight. And then John came in, but his double, Bob Elmore, would do all this great stuff out of California. And was it Dick Bass? I'm trying to remember on that. I'm trying to remember his name, the sun coordinator, but we would laugh. He got a big kick out of my New York ad libs where, what would I, not hot on, what would I say? That was, Anthony Sirica would say hot on. I'm trying to, whatever it was. Oh no, ya hump. Ya hump. And this old school, classic California stuntman, he was just the classic gentleman. He'd say, hey, how you doing? Ya hump. He would imitate it. They all liked it,
Yeah.
John and I would talk, and then, I decided, so what are you, Mother Cabrini? You never touch this stuff? Why I said that, now, growing up, going to Catholic school, they would talk about one of the first with Saints, Mother Cabrini. And what's funny is that there was a Cabrini Hospital. It must have been famous Cabrini Hospital in the famous Cabrini Greens area in Chicago. And I don't know if I saw it on the plane, but it just came to me. What are you, Mother Cabrini? You never touched something? It just came to me.
Yeah.
They like that. But the dildo jokes, one of the funniest lines that ever written to me is, you know who I am? And that was written by John. In the field of live local home entertainment, I'm a god. You know? He liked me doing it like that. But that was all script. So I don't like when I say, yeah, I lived the whole thing. You know what I mean? No, there was, there was a mixture, and we just went at it. And John started saying, go in your mouse, get out of here. He was just, I love that movie, and the two of them, the couple. I mean, I just love all of that. That movie is sweet and plain. It's funny. I've had friends, they could be from Poland, the interesting characters, Eastern Europe, Asia. And the two movies I would show them to show them American culture would be Planes, Trains, and Automobiles and Young Frankenstein.
Wow, good call on the second one
Right?
too. Yeah, that's a great one. Two great ones.
American humor, okay?
Yeah.
We'll sit and we'll watch it, and I'll say, Planes, Trains, it gets a certain heart of the heartland of America, and it just gets your own heart. And here's two super talents, and Steve and John, and just so beautifully done, and
yeah,
and just sometimes I feel like I'm John Candy on a plane. I'm the guy who wants to talk to people. I love what he says. Oh, my dogs are killing me. And I seem to meet Steve Martin's characters sometimes.
Yeah. Mike, you give me all this time. I want to end with this movie. One of the best movies.
And I'll come back anytime you say.
You're such a good human being.
I got 100 more, so we got to cover. I got great Miller's Crossing stories, and
we're going to set this up with Emily for a part 2. I want to. My dog's going. So I want to set this up. I want to set. Yeah, I want to.
He would love it.
I want to set this up with you because I feel like when I see your face, like when I saw you in Dumb and Dumber, I'm like, I know him. This is the greatest sports movie ever made, and the fact that it has a 7.4 on IMDb is a joke. It is. I can't not cry when I see this movie. I mean, so I have just want to show you a couple quick stills here.
So we can do a whole episode on just the natural.
Natural.
Oh my God.
So there's you and with a classic line, another classic line from our farm system, which was ironic.
Ricky behind me, who was with the AA with the he was from Buffalo, but he was with the Dodgers. He was great guy.
And this great scene here. So I gotta say, anything you want to say about the natural, whatever you want to say.
I need hours. I mean, Mr. Farnsworth, Richard Farnsworth, one of the greatest stunt people ever played, the coach, Wilford Brimley. I mean, the kindness he did. I've lost 2 friends since then. Danny Aiello Jr. was first man, became a big stunt coordinator.
Yeah.
And Kenny Grisano, who had been with the college, he was the pitcher in the end. He and I got so close and continued on. And he got had been a phenom. He never told me that. I saw the clips, but we stayed friends, and my wife Joanne got involved with his family, and she wasn't even in med school yet. Robert Redford offered. I'll never forget. We got a picture of my wife talking to him, very, not like, oh wow, it's Robert Redford, and him giving suggestions. And his sisters were nurses in Utah and Colorado. If he could help her get into med school, I mean, just every day was fascinating. Friends I had on it. Barry Kibble was on it. Friends you made, and I'm sorry if I'm one of those things if I'm leaving.
No, it's great to hear this. No,
I had just closed in a Broadway show one night. I went and clowned around at the tryout because I can't play baseball. Yeah. And you saw the guy with the hat. He was an ex-cop. He was Sonny Grasso's brother-in-law. He and I gave up. I tried everything. It's a story for another time. Yeah. But I'm sitting there laughing with him. And next week, Lou Tajamo, I said, God rest his soul, tells me that Barry Levinson said, where's that big guy? And because Lou said, well, you didn't lie. You can't play baseball. I was trying to fake joking. I just wanted to meet Barry Levinson and get in his next movie. I learned so much about ad-libbing, I can tell you, from him.
Yeah.
And that was me singing the national anthem, by the way.
Really?
Around me, yeah. And because we had this genius sound guy, and he went, and I, to say this, it happened in Jersey, go to him. He said, someone's got a really good voice, and it's Mike Starr. They put the mic there, I had vocalists, but I I'm no Terry Mann, no genius with singing, but I, I wind up playing ball players, detectives, or mobsters that want to sing, like in Miller's Cross. So, uh, anyway, uh, Barry, Barry said to Lou DiGiamo, "What? Where's that big guy?" And Lou says, "Oh, Mike Starr, he can't play." He goes, "I don't care." And all of a sudden, I get this call, and I come to this, and this guy's line drives whizzing by me. They bring me up to Buffalo, and Mark Johnson, the great producer, he made it so that I could do a commercial. The ball breaking we did, the laughs we had constantly with crew and different people on the set.
That's awesome.
And finally, Barry Levin says, "Mike Starr, get off the field. Don't get hurt out there." And Rob, a great place. He said, "I didn't bring you here to play baseball. I brought you in. We got to create a character for you." He said, "I brought you in to be," and I had just gained weight on this Broadway. I came back from Denver rep, and I'm working out with some in great shape, and I spent 6 weeks eating Danishes with my friend Gary Clark, because we know this off-Broadway hit was going down the tubes. I don't know. And I could go up and down. Here I am out there, and he said, "Listen, I want you to create a character, but there's going to be so many stars on this." And he didn't bullshit. He said, "I want you to figure out to ad lib every now and then, anywhere from 10 to 30 seconds." And I said, "Cool." He said, "It's not going to be more than that." So I learned quick things like that, where as opposed to in Goodfellas, it was a collaborative thing, and I researched, and he just let me go.
Right.
Martin Scorsese. But Barry would have things. That's why I would say, he'd say, "Mike, say something, insult when Redford goes, oh, look at this genius, another from our scouting thing, geniuses." And there was stuff cut out, but there was so many wonderful things in, and a couple of opportunities I blew that Wilford Brimley served up for me or someone, and all right, I didn't, or I was too shy, or I thought I was trying too hard to get in, and but then there's a lot of ones, that just happen, like that my brother's line when I lean in and say to Robert Redford, "How'd you like to wake up this every morning?" And what's funny is that Barry Levinson said, "Can we you have a name?" Because there was no name in the book. It was a created character. There's no name in the script.
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, my mother's name was Brennan." He goes, "Nah, my maiden name." I said, "Oh, my son's middle name, after the famous actor Richard Boone, his nickname is Boonsky." My son was 3 at the time, right?
Yeah.
And he said, "How about Boone?" So then I said, "Good, sounds good." And not a Richard Boone would have great stories about. I learned so much, an amazing career and life, And I had named my son at the time, and now his son, his middle name is Boone. And we had honored Richard Boone, who didn't think he was going to have a grandchild, was dying of cancer when I did Bushido Blade. So anyway, we're in the scene, and the guys started calling me Boonsky, like Danny L.J. Boonsky, and different people. And Wilfred would make sure to say, "Hey, Boone, get out of here. Boone, get." We throw in these things, and Richard Fonzo would call me Big. And so anyway, we're in the hospital scene. And to tell you how great Redford is, and his knowledge of film, but just class. He said, "Mike, what's your name in this?" I said, "Well, it's Boone, but actually Boonsky." And he said, "Boonsky." So I tell him my life story with Richard Boone, but my son. I said, "Okay." And he doesn't say a word to me. As I'm going out, exiting, he goes, "Hey, watch your head going out of there, Boonsky." And he laughs. And then I come back, he goes, "Mike, they can't cut around that." He said, not that, so what he said, "We've just immortalized them." So can you imagine years later, my son, different people seeing it, how my grandson seeing Boonsky, and thanks to all of them. But Redford was really, well, he was a special character to be around. He, look what he built. Can you imagine? He's turning to me, he goes, "I have this idea to start people don't get a chance in making films." He's telling me about his idea for Sundance.
Wow.
And I'm like, this dopey guy, this actor, they're trying to, support, taking care of his family. And my wife comes up there and got to visit a couple of days because she was an undergrad. And once again, my family watching the kids, and this and that. And it was a real magical experience to be on that and to see it. When we did the baseball game at the end, I'd be you felt like you were in this championship game. I don't want to say, oh, I know what it's like to be in the World Series. It's just that you got so into it.
Yeah.
And we were watching, and you start, foul ball, and they did all these things. And Robert Redford, talk about a guy who didn't say, I'm a really great player. He had a sense of humor about himself. One time, Tony Farrar, the batting picture there, Yankees, and also there was a guy, Gene Kirby, was an amazing human, Don Zimmer's best friend, I think. But we learned so much. All the players said, we don't know about this era. But Tony was throwing, and Redford, when he first was trying, was having a little trouble, and he trained for it. And he finally went, Tony, I'm supposed to be a great home run hitter. That's what I'm playing in this. Can you help me out? Whatever.
Yeah.
He had that tremendous humility and rootedness about him. I guess Richard Boone used to tell me, hey, hotshot, why do you think I'm doing all this stuff for you and your family? And I said, because you're a good guy. He goes, nah. Said, when you get to be a big shit, which I think you will, you better not change. He said, spread it around.
That's great.
Said, because I'll come looking for you wherever I am, and with the natural, I have so many great stories to tell you, my tryouts and everything, but the constant to learn to see Richard Farnsworth and hear his stories. He was a legend in stunts, and then did these great performances, Comes a Horseman, and the one with Sissy Spacek, where he's driving the plow across the Midwest.
A Straight Story.
Straight Story.
Yeah.
And even in Misery was it. I mean, just again, talk about a humble class guy. And he would say things like, now, I had to tell his producer one time, Biggin, said I had to tell him, now class is something you'll never be accused of. He told the guy, he was like the nicest. Wilfred would go after people. He was just crazy. Yeah. But all of them had a special thing. And Barry Levinson, I hung out with him, and
genius.
We talked. He was an Orioles fan. I mean, he'd run lines by me. He would, like, I don't mean just like humor of things, or maybe turned up in future stuff. Not like, hey, Mike, say this, No, the way George Carlin on Jersey Go with me and Stephen Root, one of the greatest ever, Stephen Root, George, one of the hardest workers, he tries stuff out. He'd say, what do you think of this, guys? We're going, George Carlin just asked me what I think of this. Another guy who didn't forget where he came from. It was just great.
Mike, and the movie has, I think one of the best lines I've ever heard.
Tell me.
About like just living life, right? Iris Gaines turns to, she goes, I believe we lead two lives, right? We have two lives, the one we learn with and the one we live with after that. And it's so true. It's like,
wait.
Yeah, where she says, she turns to Roy, Iris turns to Roy, and she says, I believe we have two lives, the life we learn with and the life we live with after that. It's just so profound. Like, I think about that. It's like you make mistakes. It's just, I don't know. I think about
who wrote that. And I don't know if it came from Malamud's book, but I always mix up this. He was the brother of the guy who wrote Chinatown. He was a great guy, and he wrote the script for The Natural.
Yeah, it's just a beautiful movie. And you know what? I cannot thank you. Gave me so much time, and you're just such a good man, and just you have your work has had such a profound effect on my life, and I can't thank you enough.
We got to do this again. We got to come
Absolutely.
back. Having too good a time.
Yeah, you're a good. You're a
lot of great people I want to tell you about.
Yeah, love to hear it, and
especially people not with us.
Yes, you're. I was thinking when you're talking about Richard Farnsworth, his ending I was really taken back by his end. Like when his passing, the way he passed, I was really affected by that. I was I was really sad.
Serious cancer. He had, even on The Natural, and I found out from Wilfred Bray, and I kept an eye open. I was like Mickey Trainer would say, who the guy Doc Dizzy said to me, you're like the shop steward of these guys, and Brimley would say to me, Wilfred would say, they all listen to you, these guys, and you got to break the ice with Redford and everything, because Redford was shy at first, and we were like, we didn't want to go near him. He says, now, come on, Big. What are you guys doing? This guy is, whatever, he would say, now you got to go over to him, and I know you think, he says, no, you understand. He says, no, you're the ringleader. You got to break the ice for this film. And it was really, had something to do, but I kept my eye on Mr. Farnsworth because there were situations, I think he had some serious emphysema even then, but I believe he had the cancer, and that's the way. Why did that make such a profound event?
No, I thought maybe I'm wrong. I hope it's not. I thought Richard Farnsworth took his own life.
Yes.
Yeah. So I thought so that it's just how he did it. Like when you listen to like it involved a shotgun, and
Yeah.
it was just the abruptness of it that
Yes.
he was clearly dealing with things that not a lot of people knew about. And like you said,
Absolutely.
he's this beautiful soul to
Yeah.
have his life end like that. It was just I don't know. It's
Yeah, because you always feel that way, you know, when you see someone like Anthony Bourdain, so you feel that way, and you knowing veterans and this and that, you know, different people, you know, you hear these stories like what does it come, what goes on, and I'm wondering if he knew it was, you know, I don't like to judge or this and that to say, I have a feeling that he was like such a heroic character, and I know people say, oh, how can you do that? You can't judge anyone like that, but you see what like you said, it kept its people didn't know, and
yeah.
maybe he wanted to go out on his own terms. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
No, it does.
And
It does.
knowing someone that wasn't going to euthanize him or whatever, you know,
Yeah.
so because he was really one of the kindest,
It seems
most
like it.
wonderful
Yeah.
people. Have you ever seen the movie Gray Fox? We would do
I
it together.
yeah.
I
I have.
coincidentally saw it on Second Avenue, just randomly because I would walk up a couple of weeks before I got The Natural.
Yeah.
So it's one of my favorite films, and I kept people should that listen to it should look it up. And I would go and Richard Farnsworth would do the lines with me. I'd say, "All right, I'm starting the gang, and all you need is guns and guts if you want." And he would do it with me, and he goes, we'd laugh, and he goes, "Michael, I do believe you like that movie. I do believe you saw that movie, didn't you?"
That's awesome. Mike, thank you so much. And you're a good soul. And hey, have a wonderful rest of the week and weekend.
Likewise, and please feel free to get back in touch and this and that, you know, because I love doing this. And you know, you meet up with people. We're only here for a relative short time. Why waste it on not, I regret the times I've lost times with people or didn't do things. And hey, here's a chance. I Zoom with my friends, my childhood friends now on every
Oh,
Thursday.
that's great. That's
And,
awesome.
we're different worlds, and we talk about how lucky we would have to grow up and have the gratitude and, where we are and everything. So I appreciate your respect and your observations. So let's do some more. I'm enjoying this.
Yeah.
And Emily will give you all my info. I'd be glad to just talk to you personally like this. We don't have to always do it part of a show. I'd be glad to, because I just I connect with people like yourself, and I love sharing stories about that people don't know about really good people. It have to be. So we'll catch Lithgow, Gene Wilder the next time this and that. I'll tell you anything you want about The Natural.
Yeah.
And Miller's Crossing, the people on that, and John Turturro, everyone, be
Absolutely.
glad. I only tell good stories. I try to only tell positive stories. Okay.
And you too. And you too. Mike, health and happiness to you, my friend.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
Take care.